Bases dropped on your Friday afternoon, and it's time for Thursdays with Niko on a Friday. Waiting Niko Moreno coming in, our friend from Pulso Sports and from the Soccer Bar. And we have him to go through the week that was. We have him to go into the week that will be when it comes to everything going on in Major League Soccer, getting his perspectives on everything going on, conference at a time. And we will see what is on Niko's mind. We always will go through what we refer to as red light, yellow light, green light. For those of you that listen to us on the network for any regular programming and such, we will do it with guests that we have in the half-hour longer format. We'll sit there and say, okay, what team is, in your mind, a green light team? Meaning that they are on a roll and they have everything going their way. We've also got afternoon D-Gram. We've also got yellow light. Yellow light can go either way. And yellow light means it's a team that's either going from red to green as they're proceeding through the intersection, or they're going from green to red. They get a smash on the brakes. Something's wrong with the car, and they got to pull it off to the side of the road and figure it out. And then, of course, red light is, as we were talking yesterday with John Morrissey at USL Tactics when our friends from the USL show were on the morning show with us. Red light, hoods up, engines dropped, oil's all over the driveway or all over the road. Car can't move, smoke's coming up everywhere, and that's what you're staring at with that particular segment with red light, yellow light, green light. So we've got all of this. We've got the weekend that will be coming up. Interesting games and interesting positions right now with teams in the Western Conference, and that's what we like to do when we bring Niko in, is we like to go with the Western perspective and see what his thoughts are and what the West's thoughts are about what's going on in the East, since we spend a lot of time in the Eastern Conference on a weekly basis. So when Niko comes in, we will find out what's going on in his mind, just to kind of give you an afternoon update as to what's going on with everything. There is a discussion about Everton and the other clubs that are surrounding promotion and relegation, and they want for the investigation and the possibility of any kind of FFP evaluation to happen quickly so they can get everything figured out. Remember that we were going through this when it came to Derby County and what it could be with everything involving their promotion and relegation. But it has been said that in the New York Times, the independent commission is basically going to say, you know what, we're going to take our own time. Issue is Everton's losses of about $460 million, more than 3 times higher than a cap imposed by the Premier League. This is from Tariq Panj at the New York Times. In March, Premier League was charged by the club with breaking their cost control rules, assigned an independent arbiter to investigate. Yes, Niall and D. Graham, we will get into Bob Bradley and get into Miami. March, the Premier League charged the club breaking their cost control rules, assigned an arbiter to investigate. By league rules, the arbitrator alone is empowered to decide the case and put out any kind of penalties. Rival clubs are looking for a decision before the start of next season. You have the players that are attached, point deductions, Everton's relegation, all those kinds of things. But it is now time to bring in the man. Oh, false start. So it is time to bring in Niko Moreno, and we'll see where Niko is. And I don't know if he's on his second cup of coffee, but we'll see what's going on in Niko's mind here as we do TWN on a Friday. What is going on, my friend?
What's up, boss? Happy to be with you guys again. Did I see my third? I'm out and about because it's a sunny day in Seattle, and I'm running around doing a couple of things. So I got my, basic guy type of drink over here. So yeah, man, but it's my third. I'm excited to be on. Lots to talk about. Some controversial, some not so much. We got green light, red light. I got some new customers that I'm looking at, so let's do it.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead, and we actually do have some requests for. We're going to go ahead and lead off with green light, yellow light, red light. That's how fired up folks are about this particular segment because of some things that were said within the hour in Toronto. Bob Bradley is using his coach's decision to bench Bernardeschi this weekend. We have Phil Neville snapping at a reporter in Miami. So we can have those two thoughts independent of our traffic light, or they can be integrated within the traffic light. Where do you want to go?
They got to be integrated, man. And I'm going to start it off with the red light because you know that, look, there's a lot of things going on in Toronto. But in addition, now we have a whistleblower. And now we have, a revelation of players and who in this locker room is going to side with the Italians and who isn't, who's going to have Bob's back, what's going on. Look, obviously, this team has lacked creativity. They've lacked an identity, but they've also lacked a lot of players. We've talked about it. We don't need to go back and read the list of injured players. We don't. But at the end of the day, when you have leaders in the locker room, it doesn't just start with the head coach. It's also the players. So Bernardeschi, Insigne, and their 14 million combined and being a big, huge part of this salary, if not obviously like 75% of this cap space, you have two choices. Either you go the diva way and you say, hey, they're not playing for me, we need to do it this way, or you're a leader and you try to grind it out and you grab these young players and you use that caliber and that experience to just get everybody on your side to play. And it sounds like it was the wrong option. These two guys are looking like divas, to be quite frank, man. Look, I'm not in Toronto. I'm not in the day-to-day. But for me to say that Bob Bradley isn't doing the tactics, isn't studying players, they're not practicing combinations and transition moments, I wouldn't be able to say that because I know Bob. We've worked with him, we've followed him, we've covered him, we've asked him questions, we know what his body of work is about. So because of that, I'm going to have to blame Bernardeschi for coming out and breaking this locker room even more than it was already at. And because of that, I'm going to hit him the red light. Beyond the results, beyond the lack of opportunities that this team is creating, and beyond the issues they have defensively, now there's a crack in that foundation, and something has to be done.
All right. So going back and kind of recapping things, Bernardeschi basically in his press conference, less than pleased, and basically said, I think the city, the fans, everybody don't deserve this, and I think maybe we need to change something. We need a little bit more tactics. We need an idea how we play because this is the real problem for me. It's impossible to play like this when we play without idea. Then Bob Bradley comes forward and basically says, okay, yeah, we talked about it, and everything's done. And so you get the impression that it's like he understood it was the wrong thing to do, meaning Bernardeschi going public. He gets it now. He understands it. You figured it was going to be, okay, water under the bridge, everything. We got a match coming up. Everything's cool. And then Bob decides to use the coach's discretion, decision, whatever word you want to use. And it is now one of those things where you're not going to have a coach's decision based on internal discussions. 5 losses in 7. They're on the bottom. And Bob Bradley says, Bernardeschi, you're not even in the roster. You're not even playing. You're not coming off the bench. No, nothing. How many of the following individuals will be in Toronto at the start of the 23 season? Bob Bradley, Bernardeschi, Insigne. How many of them will even be in Toronto in your mind at the beginning of next season?
That's an excellent question. And I am going to say that is going to be the players in this one.
Okay.
Yeah, I really do think that at least Insigne has to go. With Bernardeschi, he showed you some productivity, more than Insigne has. It sounds like there's a personal problem between Insigne and Bob Bradley. And it's been reported that he has issues. He doesn't want to work for him. And there's been injury stuff. I would take the hit if I was Toronto. A team that's front office is also falling apart, and everybody's jumping for the hills as well. And obviously, we'll see how that works out next season. But if I had to bet, it would be the most expensive player, the one that obviously is not producing, and I need to take a hit and bring somebody else. Getting rid of Bob would be a even worse mistake, in my opinion. And you're showing your fans and the rest of the players that a superstar can come in and just push a coach out. So I just think that would be worst. And Bernadeschi, even though he was the person who voiced it out, I really do think that there's a little more of a push from somewhere else for him to say what he said. I think he's at least produced enough for this team to stay on. So I would say that Insigne would be the one guy that I think is out of the equation and would be a relevant move to help this team out in some way.
I don't think any of them are coming back. I think that, think of it this way. Right now, you've lost 5 of 7. And it wouldn't surprise me. Think of it this way. If they, without Bernadeschi, and you get, let's say you lose to DC. You lose to DC, and we'll have juice boxes coming up in just a little bit. You lose to DC. What faith would I, if I'm the front office, have in Bob Bradley anyway? If anything, I think Bradley ends up going first, and then I think Bernadeschi and Insigne go back home after the end of the season.
Right, but then you have to think that you're prolonging the problem because this is your sporting director and your coach. Right. Now you're going to have to find a couple of new guys for it. And again, now you're becoming this club that is a huge problem, is a hot potato. Who's going to want to come and try to fix that regardless of the money and the issues and the locker room and everything else? I think that if you want to show stability, you got to keep Bob Bradley. There is no way, because it's hard to blame him. Let's go back to the fact that he's only been here about a year and a half or 2 full seasons, kind of. It hasn't been long. And the problems that are handicapping this team come from the infrastructure that was built prior to Bob Bradley, the decisions that were made, the lack of depth, the misuse of resources. I think that's come before Bob. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to get rid of the rotten apples, the Ron Artest, the Terrell Owens, and I'm going to find someone else to come in, be a leader, and produce. That's what I think. And with Bernadeschi, you have to be able to get a little bit from everything you lost. If you just cut both of them loose, that's a big loss for your salary cap, for the future of what you're trying to do. If you can amend things with Bernadeschi, who's shown to be the most productive one out of the two, and you could fix what's going on, I think this club would have a better chance. But I'm with you. Maybe none of them. You just get rid of everything. You break it all down. You tear it up. You hit it with the wrecking ball and you start from scratch. Sure. That's also an option. So I like both. I'd say, let's put it this way. Okay. If they want to redo everything and start from scratch, they all go. If they want to keep some sort of pillars or foundation from what's going on, you keep Bob and maybe Bernadeschi.
Halftime at Thursdays with Niko on a Friday here on the SDH Network. And we're having folks chiming in. Our buddy Jason Nix goes, T.O. taking flack today, Niko. That's uncalled for, man. You invoke
I'm just saying, those guys that get labeled that way. And look, T.O., extremely talented, but very unreliable emotionally. And, that kind of catches up to you.
All right. Second issue. Phil Neville snapping at a reporter, our contributor, Niall. Phil Neville snapping at a reporter was also quite entertaining. And once again, we get into coaching carousel pretty much every single week. But let me ask this. I don't know if you've seen the video. I don't know, because it's out there. When it comes to decorum in a press room setting, How are you when you are there, whether it's at the training field, Brian Schmetzer, everybody's outside, you're in a post-match situation. When it comes to decorum and how you handle yourself in these situations, how do you handle yourself in media opportunities?
Personally, as someone that has been ridiculed and hit back by Bruce Arena, Robbie Keane a couple of times, Brian Smetzer snapped at me on a few occasions, Siggy Smith once. So I ask certain questions that do, get a reaction out of coaches and players. And as a media member, you have to understand your role. You do want to make sure that they do respect you, of course, but having some empathy and understanding that these are players or people that have a lot of stress and they have a lot going on, and especially right after the game, right? That's when any individual, any athlete is at his highest point, a boiling point right after that game. So with that in mind, as a reporter, I'm going to be very calm. I'm going to give him that verbal aikido, and I'm not going to go at the exact same rate he's coming at me. I'm going to come a little bit lower. I'm going to try to bring it down. I'm not going to back down from my question, but I'm going to be very careful on how I continue to dig or follow up for him to understand that, hey, that was uncalled for, but I'm going to continue to bring out my question and my point, right? I know Franco. I don't think he meant any disrespect. And the fact that Phil painted him with the brush of always looking at things negatively, I think that's wrong, because you're trying to portray that information should come out in a certain way, that it should all be positive comments and never criticize you. And that's not what media members are there for. They're not there to cheer you on. They're not there to be a voice to amplify your brand. No, they're there to get those questions that fans want answered. They're there to create news, create content, bring information. Yes, voice that information in their own way, in their own ability, in the way that they're taking it, right? And anybody who's followed Miami knows that Phil Neville is hard to defend at times. Decisions that are made in this one, going with a 3-man backline in part of a derby. So those questions have to be asked. So I'm going to go ahead and say that for me, that's the way I handle it. I try to be very passive. And I think Franco as well. I think he didn't try to shout back or didn't say, hey, I'm not disrespecting you, nothing like that, because that's what you don't want to get to, is that shouting match. But I am disappointed at Phil Neville, and I think that an apology is in order for what he said and the way he said it against a reporter that has been there for a long time. I know him personally. I know how hard it is to stay hard at work when you're moving from one publication to the next, when you're trying to be a hustler for making a podcast and trying to, be a freelancer. There's a lot that goes into being a day-to-day journalist, and Franco does that. So I'm going to go ahead and have his back and tell Phil Neville, you don't do that.
All right, so now that we have weaved this road here, heading in the mountains by the Boeing plant where traffic is really tight, who's your yellow light this week? We haven't even gotten into red light, yellow light. I mean, we got red light, but who's your yellow light this week?
My yellow light is the team that just played the red light. Look, there's a lot of yellow contenders, but I am ready to give Austin, a team that I had in the red, I'm going to move them to the yellow. I know that they lost Open Cup, but this team is starting to regain pieces. Cascante, Fagundes is starting to get a lot of minutes. Those are two key players for what's the central components of this squad, right? I talked to Fagundes when he was here in Seattle. He's extremely motivated. He wants to kind of once again take that role of leadership and being a guy that is producing for this team constantly. He had his best season in MLS last season. Unfortunately, he was hurt, but the rehab has been really good. He's starting to get a lot of minutes. And if you get him going in that midfield, where Rigoni's starting to play a little bit better, where Johan Valencia starting to develop into a better center midfielders, where Jassie's starting to get a little confidence. I think this team has enough talent and a very good coach to get out of those rocky, tough positions that put them at the low part of the Western Conference. So with this result against Toronto, with those components and those players that are starting to get minutes back, I'm going to give Austin the yellow light this week.
Who's your green light now?
Green light. You're going to hate the green light. I'll tell you right now. You're going to hate the green light. But I'm going to go ahead and put the Philadelphia Union in the green light. Philadelphia had a lot of curveballs this season. It's not easy to handle CCL. There's a lot of things that I'm sure that the coach would like to have back this season. Jim has been at times uncharacteristic in his approach to games, his substitutions, and really the way he just approached certain games. So with that kind of being in the back, no longer the NCCL, I'm starting to see what we all were hoping to see this season from them when you look at their roster, with Lowe coming back, with Torres having some minutes, with having a little bit more of a deep roster. When you have Carranza once again finding the back of the net, Brujo Martinez starting to get back, that back line starting to look like that defensive line from last season. So with everything kind of said and done, I really do think that this team deserves a green light. It wasn't easy for them to handle it all together, but I really do think that with the talent level that they have, the type of coaching, they're going to get on a row, and I think you're going to see them from here on out take the top of the East right under Cincinnati.
All right. We got about 10 minutes till we'll get into the schedule, get into juice boxes here and what you think about what's going on. 7:30s. We got a handful of 7:30s. Everything's kind of gravitating your way this week for a change. CF Montreal at home going up against that Inter Miami side that we were talking about. Big favorite CF Montreal at home on the minus side. You're going to Stade Saputo. I got to go Montreal there. Revs and Fire. Revs favored at home against a Fire team that's almost a plus 300. NYC Philadelphia Union. All right, I'll stop here. In rematch of the Eastern Conference Final, you mentioned Philadelphia. Philadelphia on the road. This one's at Citi Field. Philadelphia is a plus 209. Your draw is a plus 222. NYCFC is favored at a plus 136. You going to ride that plus 209? Oh, he froze on me. Oh. You know, you sit there and you size up these things, and then you get all the build up, and then he freezes. Ah. Yeah, all right, so here we go. All right, and this is he's in his car. This is the beauty of this segment. The man is in his car, and he is calling. He is calling from Seattle in his car, getting ready for the lunch hour, getting ready to cover a team that's got the late game against Red Bulls, and that should frustrate the ever-loving ish out of everybody. And so since he had mentioned Philadelphia, that's where I want to stop with the 7:30s and see what's on his mind with this one. So we'll see what happens there. When Niko dials back in, it is completely, he's right there. We had the tease, and the tease was right there with us. Once again, guys, since we're in juice boxes, let us know what you think when it comes to these games. We'll have this as part of the entertainment as well, since we've gone through red light, yellow light, green light. Let me know who your yellows and greens are. Obviously, we were discussing Toronto as a red light this week. Who else is in your ideas for a yellow light and green light and red light? Since we mentioned Toronto, we mentioned Inter Miami, we mentioned a lot of different folks. So will be interesting to hear what you guys have to say about this. You know, I'm imagining, I don't know how many of you have traveled in the Seattle area, but I made that reference on purpose when it came to travel and getting everybody, into a squeezed-in space. And so interesting to see what happens here. The availability report is out for Atlanta United, presented by our friends at Piedmont Healthcare. Out, Eric Lopez, Omar Sadic. Ozzie Alonso still recovering from the ACL. Brad and Santi Sosa are questionable. Obviously, Brad recovering from the MCL. We still got about 4 or 5 weeks before any real ideas as to whether or not what the timetable will be for Brad. Caleb Wiley is obviously getting ready for the U20s. He is starting for the match that's coming up in 4 minutes. And obviously, Luis Araujo and Franco Ibarra. Obviously, the red and the yellow card accumulations for those for the match that's coming up in Orlando at 7:30. 7:39 kick. 7:39 kick. So let me know your yellows and your green lights since we already talked reds. Let me know what you're thinking when it comes to the 7:30s. NYC, Philadelphia Union. Let me know what you're thinking about Orlando and Atlanta. Let everybody else know in the Twitch pitch what you think about Orlando and Atlanta. Toronto and D.C. Does D.C. put Bob Bradley out of his misery? Does Wayne Rooney get Bob Bradley fired? You got some Copa Tejas. You have some stuff in the 8:30 time zone. Houston and Austin, Minnesota United, RSL. St. Louis, all caps, facing Vancouver. 9:30, Colorado and FC Cincinnati. FC Cincinnati on the road is a plus 211. That's changed a little bit from this morning. Colorado's a plus 123. West Coast stuff, it is LAG and Charlotte. LAG's a big favorite, minus 141. Knicks, hope you're doing well. San Jose and FCD. And San Jose's a plus 100. Seattle's a minus 101 going up against Red Bulls at a plus 294. We've got the 2 games on the free TV side of things, and it is on Sunday. We've got the 2 matches. The first one's on Big Fox. The second one is on FS1. Jason, you are not it is not a minority opinion, not liking the purple team. When I was trying to figure out how I was going to reference the purple team when you're on Twitter and you're like, it's a network. I just went ahead and said Orlando. Didn't give them the city. Didn't give them the acronym. Just went ahead and said Orlando. So that way it's just like, all right, that's what we're talking about. Also on the board, your Sunday match, 3:00, Sporting in Portland. That one's on Big Fox. 3:25 kick if you're interested in that one. Nashville and Columbus, it is an 8:30 start time for the broadcast, 25-minute pregame show, so 8:55 kick on FS1 on Sunday night with Nashville and Crew. Looking at a lot of these matchups, it is Union as an underdog, Atlanta's an underdog at a plus 202. We posted on the network this morning the conversation that we had when Jason came in during Weekend Whip Around, so you can go back and listen to that. Toronto FC is a home favorite against DC United without Bernadeschi. I don't know. The line hasn't moved, which is interesting. And then you look at FC Cincinnati on the road, St. Louis all caps at home, Charlotte having to go from playing Birmingham in Open Cup in the midweek, flying out to Los Angeles to play LAG. I can understand why LAG is minus 141. Also on the board, San Jose at home. I know a lot of folks are looking at that one. Sounders and Red Bulls. Red Bulls are going to play like the ball's got cooties at a plus 294, and Seattle's going to have to find their way through that one. Looking at the standings heading into the weekend. In the West, LAFC is at 25 points. 2 matches in hand on Seattle, who's lost 3 of 4. They are at 23 points. All caps and FCD are at 22 points. And San Jose is at 18 points. They've lost 2 in a row. Minnesota United's won 2 in a row. No update yet as to when Bebe Reynoso is going to. Okay, so we have an update. Niko's phone overheated. So we'll wait for the phone to. So we'll blow through the matches. When he comes back on and his phone isn't overheated in the car. Vancouver's at 17 points. They would be your top 7 in the West. Portland and Austin tied at 16 points is your 8-9 matchup. Knicks, good to see you. Go watch the U20 World Cup. We're not that far behind you. Houston's at 15 points. RSL's at 15. Colorado's lost 3 in a row. They're at 12. Sporting's at 10. They've only scored 9 goals in 14 matches. LAG's at 9 points. They've lost 4 of 5 at 2, 3, and 8. In the East, Cincinnati's at 30 points. Only lost once in their first 13. Nashville's at 25. Revs at 24. Atlanta United, they've hit each column in each of their last 3. They're at 22 points. Union's at 21. They've won 4 of 5. DC United, 19 points. Orlando City, 19 points. That's your top 7. Crew and Charlotte are at 18 points. That'd be your 8-9. NYC's at 16. They've lost 3 of 5, broke a 3-game losing streak last time out. Red Bulls at 16 points. They've won 2 of 3. Inter Miami's at 15 points. CF Montreal's at 15 points, both at 5-0 and 8. Inter Miami has a far better goal difference. Chicago's at 15 points. Toronto FC at 2-7-5. 13 goals scored, 14 matches. They have lost 3 of 4, 1 point in 4 matches, and they are dead last in the East. So that's where we are with your standings and getting you ready for everything. So once again, before everybody jumps to go see the U20s, let me know what you think about who's your yellow light. There he is. So real quick, we'll blow through the games now that his phone's no longer overheated. All right, we're gonna go through this so your phone doesn't overheat real quick. We're gonna talk about the matches and what's going on. I'll pick the highlighted matches of all of the start times. I think the 7:30 start, NYC and Philadelphia. Since you said that Philly, you think they got a green light for you. Philly is a plus 209 at Citi Field against NYC. What do you think?
That's a big one. That's one that I'm really high on. Let me get the numbers. I think we should be okay in terms of overheating. But what are the numbers on that Philadelphia game?
Plus 209, Philly. Draws a plus 222. NYC's a plus 137.
Look, I got my A handed to me last week. I've done some serious thinking, and that's why I was so upset that my phone was messing up, because I'm being really careful with this ones. I'm taking Philadelphia in this one. They've won the last 3 meetings against New York City FC. They're an uprising squad. There's a new momentum. Philadelphia is my lock for the week. Yes, is my lock, even though it's a tough game and, there's a rivalry between the two cities, but I'm high on Philadelphia. I didn't give him a green light just because I like Jim. I mean, this is a team that I think is on the rise. Give me Philadelphia.
Does Wayne Rooney get Bob Bradley fired? Yes or no?
DC wins and Bob stays.
Okay.
I don't know if you can bet on that, but DC wins and Bob stays. Again, I really do believe that they brought in Bob for a reason. They're not going to just throw it away just because. But this DC team, man, is starting to play different. It's starting to get Benteke more chances. Fontes has been really good. Dahome got his first goal last week, giving you a little bit of depth. I really like what DC is doing. And when you play a Toronto team that's down in the waters and they seem to have no sort of even cohesiveness away from the field, I think they're going to get hit hard.
Atlanta and the purple team, what do you think is going to happen?
Man, that's a tough one, man. I think Atlanta has a lot of issues at the moment. I think Orlando has issues of their own. I think this is going to come down to individual efforts. So I'm going to take a draw in this one.
It sounded like you were canceling folks out.
Yeah, I'm going to take the draw in this one because I think they both have very talented squads. They both been up and down, inconsistent. I would say Atlanta, but Pedro Gajes is going to be all over. And I still have my apprehensions about Orlando's overall attacking abilities and their attacking movements. So even though Atlanta tends to give you a lot of easy goals at times, I think this one's going to be a draw.
All right, West Coast games. LAG's hosting Charlotte. Charlotte lost in the midweek in Open Cup to Birmingham. They were at a plus 345. LAG, Ricky Puig got called a clown by Chiellini at a minus 141. What do you think?
LAG, I think they're going to find it that what they just did against LAFC and beating that C team that LAFC put out and Ricky's messy celebration and the whole payaso thing, I think is going to backfire on this squad. I really do. Ricky getting on Twitter and retweeting with the emojis and all of this stuff. Ricky, my guy, worry about the pitch, man. Stop worrying about what Chiellini said. I mean, really. You make him look bad by just ignoring it and just not getting a little pity match. So don't do that, man, especially when your team is having a hard time winning and you're at the basement of the West. So I like Charlotte in this one. I like the fact that this LA Galaxy team is going to come in tired. I mean, they played as a first unit as they could possibly have. Javier Hernandez has gotten week after week after week after week an opportunity to score, and he hasn't. I think he's going to be down. Javier Hernandez is a very streaky scorer. And when he gets on a bad streak of games, it's hard to get out. And without Javier Hernandez and Jovic scoring for this squad, they do very little. So because of that, I'm going to take Charlotte in this one, despite them having issues of their own.
Last game I want you to preview is yours. Seattle hosting Red Bulls at 10:39. Seattle is a minus 101. Draws a plus 233. Red Bulls are a plus 294 in the composite. What's going to happen here?
I'm taking the home team on this one. The draw is probably the safe bet if you were really doing it that way. But I think that this Seattle team at home, and they've made me look bad recently. They really have. But I think they're getting some players back. I think Nuhu's going to be better than he was last week. Christian won't be there, obviously. But I think you'll see Jordan as a 9 for this one against a high-pressing Red Bulls team. I don't know if you remember, but with Jordan up 9, Seattle put a big number on St. Louis at home. And I would really reference both teams as playing very similar. Even though the Red Bulls have played better, I got to say it. New coach, I feel like they have been a little bit more comfortable on the ball. They've slowed down the tempo a bit when they're attacking. They still press high. They still play transition. But I feel like the quality on the ball has been beneficial for the team. Seeing Van Zier back and the fact that the team wanted him back and it seems like they want to make amends and we're just going to focus on things is interesting. It seemed like maybe the coach was a big part of the whole issue. So seeing a united locker room is, kind of hard for the Seattle team. But at home, with some of the changes that I think you'll see in this week for this Seattle squad, I think that they'll take Red Bulls and they'll once again get on the winning end of things. I talked to Joe Paulo this week. He said, man, we got to change the mentality. We need to be more aggressive. We need to be more defiant. And I think he's right spot on. Sometimes Seattle is possessing the ball and they're just doing it without purpose, being too comfortable swinging it from side to side without really getting forward. So I think Joe Paulo and Albert Rusnak are going to change that up this week. You might see one of them constantly pushing forward while the other one stays, adding a little bit more pieces up front. Nicolas Dodero did not take that loss in Vancouver lightly. And you might see a really focused on precise Nicolas Dodero that we haven't seen in the last couple of games. So with all that said, I think Seattle's going to have enough to win this game at home.
All right, cut the promo for me. What's going on with Pulso Sports and Soccer Bar?
Pulso Sports, like I said, we got the JP interview all in English. JP's English has been really fantastic to see. He expresses himself so well. He pauses, he takes a deep breath and really gives you some insight. I mean, check out the JP interview. You're really going to like it. It's a scrum. We ask him a lot of tough questions, talks about the group. So check that out. I'm going to be hitting the training field here in the next 10 minutes. So if there's some news, you're going to get those there immediately. In Soccer Bar, I wasn't able to be there yesterday, but they had a really good discussion about Open Cup, the Payaso story, some really good insight from Diego Cora and John Rojas in that one. So check that out as well.
Niko Moreno, El Rolo NW, go have your phone cool off. Go out to practice.
Guys, I apologize. I promise that the next episode is going to be so much better. This was a technical mistake, obviously, but I'm a little bit nervous that John is going to cut my contract and the paychecks will stop coming. So if you are listening to this show, guys, please tell John that you want to keep Niko's segment on, and hopefully he doesn't cut me.
It's a show on a network, brother. It ain't just a segment. It's an entire show. I'd be cutting part of the programming grid. I can't do that. Go to practice, my friend. We'll catch up with you next week.
I appreciate you, my guy. Thank you.
All right, Niko Moreno, El Rolo NW. He's going to practice, and we're going to go watch the U20s. It's going on right now. U20s, it is in the 10th minute. They are goalless with Slovakia and the U.S. No, I'm not firing Niko. So later today, here's the rundown. Obviously, on the app and on the web and all of our social media channels, this will get turned over very, very quickly. Also, later today, Prem and Proper setting you up for the last week of the regular season and all the permutations that could happen there. Also on the board, our preview of everything going on in the NPSL Southeast. Got matchups coming up this weekend, and you might hear some familiar voices when it comes to play-by-play in a couple of those locations, all Saturday night, 7 o'clock on 11 Sports, ELEVEN Sports, to catch the broadcast. So for Niko, for everybody here at SDH, enjoy your weekend. We'll be back at it again with tape stuff, and we've got we got the U2s, Atlanta United 2 and Toronto FC 2, 6 o'clock pregame show starts 5:45 on the network on Sunday afternoon. So thanks once again for another great week. We'll be back at it before you know it. And since it's the end of the show, play it safe, everybody. That means that I get to do this. Enjoy the U20s. We'll catch up with you soon.